Welcome to Digging In with the DLCs, where we intertwine pedagogy with digital learning. In this episode, we investigate how to take some of our favorite face-to-face learning activities and transform them into meaningful digital activities for our virtual learners. So if this, then that. I am thinking if I did this thing in my physical classroom, then how am I going to make that work for my virtual classroom or in a digital world? So I'm super excited that we are talking about transforming some of our favorite learning activities to work in this digital world that we're in.
Absolutely. I know so many teachers have been so concerned, not so much even about making things digital, but making them digital in a way that their virtual students don't get left behind. I know that's been a big concern this year.
Yeah, and sometimes we plan these really fun activities and we have these structures that we figured out that work for engaging our students when we're face to face. And we want kids to have those same interactions if they're virtual students as well. Let's see, the first thing when we are reimagining these lessons for virtual learning, we want to think pedagogy first. Think back to last spring and even now still, like there are so many educational technology companies just throwing, free trials and this tool and that tool. Like there is a fire hose of tools that we can use.
Yes.
But we have to remember, what is our learning objective? What do we really want kids to learn? They're all going to be using technology. Like these Chromebooks are like pencil and paper at this point.
Yes.
How are we actually going to enhance the lesson because we know what the learning objective is, and then we're going to use this tool to accomplish that learning objective?
Exactly. And I think too, the big thing is not getting caught up in all of the new tools. If you've already mastered a tool and it does what you need it to do you really need to introduce a new one that's going to do the same thing?
Yeah, for sure.
Well, and then too, I think you have to make sure with all of those shiny new tools that you're not just taking a pencil and paper worksheet and turning it into a shiny new digital worksheet. Like, are you actually looking at this lesson through the tech lens and figuring out how we can dig deeper and engage these students and how we can get to higher levels of learning with the technology, not just creating another worksheet?
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, like you said, those tools, there's some that'll grade them for you. Like they're making it really easy. And while those are easier on the teacher potentially, we got to keep our kids first. We got to keep that pedagogy first. Yeah,
absolutely. And then too, just not getting caught up in making it pretty. Like it says, I've heard so many teachers this year that have really good ideas, and then they get so overwhelmed with trying to make it look good that they just stop and forget it. And it doesn't have to be beautiful. I mean, I'm the world's worst. I want it to be pretty, and I love all of the pretty shiny things.
Oh my gosh, I'm so guilty.
you gotta go back to step one and focus on the pedagogy and what's our end goal? What are we trying to get out of this? And what are our students going to get out of this? And don't get so hung up in making it pretty and like mine might not look as good as theirs did. Go with what works. Like focus on
there can be iterations to this. Make it functional first, make it work, make sure that the lesson even is a successful lesson with your kids, that they learn what they're supposed to. And then maybe the next year or, the next time that same type of task comes up, then we can make it pretty. If that's important, it's not. And I think too, that can be one of those things that will overwhelm teachers. And sometimes it gets so pretty and there's so many great things and so many places to click that it can get overwhelming to students too. So keeping that in mind that if I am the student, if I'm the end user, is this really user friendly and am I accomplishing the learning objective?
Absolutely. I think back to my warm-up slides in my classroom a few years ago, when the GIF world became really popular. And I looked at those slides a few weeks ago, and there are so many GIFs going on that page. I don't know how my students could focus on what it was they were supposed to be looking at because it's so busy and there's so much happening. But I was so excited about that new tool and the kids thought it was cool. So I just piled as many on there as I could because it was really fun. but then are we losing what it is we're trying to do with the fun, you know? So I try to step back and look at things that way now. Like, sometimes less is more.
Yeah, for sure. Like, would you like a lesson with your GIF?
Yeah, for sure.
Well, so let's talk about some of these digital activities that we're used to using in our classrooms that we want to work for our virtual learners as well.
Yes.
One of the first ones that I think of is card sorts. Like, as a former math teacher, like, I love physical manipulatives that my kids could move around. They could group them, they could sort them, you know, whether it's question and answer or grouping things in like categories, whatever it is. So if a card sort is your thing, or if it makes sense for a lesson, Google Slides and even Google Jamboard are awesome for making manipulatives. You can drop in a background and then pictures or text boxes or shapes that have your different things that need to be sorted, and kids can move those around. It's like a drag and drop, which is really, really nice. You know, I can even imagine like kids sharing this activity, but what if they didn't? What if they all worked individually and then we put them in breakout rooms to compare what they have?
Yeah,
so then
that's awesome.
Add on some conversation to that and get kids interacting, whether they're working on it collaboratively to start, or then they're working on it individually and then discussing.
For sure. And like, just this one, for instance, because that's what's up. I mean, several of these people will actually be in more than one category. Yes. So that could lead to some pretty open debates. Like, why did you choose to put Harriet Tubman in women's suffrage instead of abolition? Because she kind of played a role in both. And that could lead to some deeper, you know, discussions there. And then if we were doing this in class is over, cards are put away, we're going to walk out, and you've got to try to remember what you did the next day. Where with this digital version, now every kid has their own copy. So what an awesome test review you just created.
Absolutely.
You know, and then if those kids have something in the wrong place, they've then got to go physically move it to the correct place. And that's, you know, that's burning into their brain. When you've got to go correct something and move it where it belongs, you're going to know the next time where it goes.
Yep, absolutely. I agree with you. Yeah, so the card sort, being able to make drag and drop, super cool. Super easy too.
Absolutely.
So another one that I really enjoy is the gallery walk. And I think of this two different ways. So one gallery walk is I have posted information around the classroom and kids are walking to get information that they need to complete whatever the activity is. So that's one way that I think about gallery walks. And in that case, something like Google Slides is wonderful. You can make things hyperlinked where it goes to a certain slide for kids to get the information they need, right? The other way that I think about gallery walks is sharing student work. For kids to have a larger audience than just the teacher seeing these great projects and great final products that they're creating. And so that can be done in Google Slides as well. So it could be a shared Google slide where every student has edit access and they all claim a slide to put their work on. Kids can then go in and see each other's. They can use the commenting feature or the suggesting feature to give feedback. But even a better use of that for me is a Canvas discussion, actually. Like I actually really love Canvas discussions. And so instead of a student turning in a Canvas assignment, which only goes to the teacher, imagine that, you know, the prompt is your discussion prompt as far as, you know, turn in your final assignment here, embed it as an image, put in your video, whatever it is. And then kids can use that rich content editor to add all those things inside a Canvas discussion that others can see. And then we've got kind of that threaded reply feature where we can, you know, coach kids on how to give feedback and how to ask questions and actually have some discussion around those pieces of work that they're creating and they're putting in that time. And that I'm sure that they might give you a little bit more effort if they know that somebody's going to see it other than just you.
Exactly. Yeah. And imagine the growth that comes from that feedback. I mean, one, having to provide feedback to someone, but then getting feedback other than the teachers. I mean, that's pretty impactful.
Yeah, and something that I don't see teachers use a lot with Canvas discussions is there's the option to turn on likes, and kids can like posts, right? And while I know that we think that that's going to be like, oh, I'm just going to go like my friends or I'm going to like everyone's, if we coach kids on using those likes like it's currency, like you don't just go spending your money on everything.
That's right.
Money on the best one of those things or the one that you really want. And so we can have kids kind of curate the discussion with likes and saying, you know, coaching them on give the like to, like, if this were going to be your grade, which one of these would you want to be your response to this?
Yes, absolutely.
Another cool thing about
that's the world they live in. So it always works.
For sure. Bringing in that social learning, that whole social media aspect. Another cool thing in the Canvas discussions is if you turn on likes, you can sort your discussion by number of likes. And so imagine instead of like the one that the kids deemed worthy of the best likes, instead of that being buried because it was posted first or, you know, third or whatever, it's right there at the top.
That's awesome. Yes. Very, very awesome. Okay, so as a former history teacher, scavenger hunts are one of the joys in my life, for real. I love these so much. That was one of my goals always for history is how can I make it engaging? How can I make it fun? How can I make kids who, you know, innately do not love history find a love for history? And this is what I use, scavenger hunts and breakouts.
Yeah.
So, I mean, just the old school scavenger hunt, you've got kids moving around using clues to try to find miscellaneous items and solve a puzzle before everybody else. Like it's a race. So everybody loves a race and we're learning while we're racing. Yeah. So how can we turn that digital and not lose it, you know, not lose the fun? And so digital breakouts or escape rooms have been the answer to this for sure. If you've never done one of those, it's real simple. It's just a web page that uses images, text, hyperlinks, and students are going to do the same thing that they did moving around in the scavenger hunt, except they're sitting still and they're doing it digitally. They can still work in teams. They can do it individually. It's just totally up to you and how you set it up. So we've got a couple of examples in here, and this is one of my favorites, this Civil War event escape room. This was for Texas history.
Oh, Genially. I love Genially.
Oh, Genially is my life. I know that it doesn't have to be all shiny and pretty, but I've never made anything through Genially that wasn't shiny and pretty. But I will tell you the reason I love it so much, because Google Slides was my life prior to Genially. I did love it. But do you know how many times I had to answer the question or say the phrase, put it in presentation mode to students? You've got to put it in presentation mode or it's not going to work. Well, you don't have to say that was Genially. And I thought, like, that's my favorite part. Yeah, don't have to worry about them getting lost in the mix. So this is, instead of them being able to edit or move, really, they're just going to work through this.
Yeah, and so the teacher, I know a lot of times those, you know, the digital breakouts and escape rooms can be a little cumbersome to create. And so Genially as a platform is really cool because they have so many templates that are already made where you're just plugging in your content, but they've already done all the design and the hyperlink and basically given you kind of a storyline to add to it as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, it shows you like where you need to put your clues and your locks and all of that. So yeah, I think there's probably 10 or 15 in there right now that you can go through. It's really amazing for sure.
Yeah.
Definitely recommend. And so as they go into each event, it's got a little blurb about it for them to read. And then there's hidden clues on this page, like the 1861. And then they have the option after they've explored this page, like, do you want to watch a video to maybe give you a little more info? Or do you just want to click here and try your luck at this lock and see? And so basically it's going to do that for each one of the battles. And then when they get to the end, if all of their locks are correct, they're going to escape. And the locks are just done with a Google form.
Yeah. Well, and I love how you've built in choice even in that breakout. Like a lot of times we just give them the information, but you've given them the option to read it or to watch it, to listen, whatever that might be. And so you're still hitting some other things that are going to help engage students beyond just the fact that they're doing the digital breakout. You're giving them choice as well.
And I mean, it's, you know, accepting the fact that some kids are going to already know about the Battle of Galveston. I mean, I learned that the hard way. You have kids that have lived all over the world, so they're going to know what the Battle of Galveston is already if they're from Galveston. Maybe they've lived there their whole life. They probably don't need to read this.
Right.
You know, they probably know this pretty well, so they can just try their luck at that lock. Or I can, like myself as a student, I always had to go read the question and then go find what I was looking for. And so I gave them that option too, because for me, I would want to try the lock first and know what I needed to go find on this page. That's how my brain works.
Yep, I totally understand that. So, and I know that we've talked about social studies examples here, but I've done breakouts in math and science and in ILA, and in electives. So know that this can work for any content, right?
Absolutely. I've seen some really, really cool ones in electives. So yeah, there's tons of options out there.
4 corners. So getting kids, I mean, like in the classroom, they're sitting down so much. This is one of those activities that we get them up and moving around the room, thinking about giving them some type of opinion or a response where they have to go to one corner of the room for which one they agree with, whether that's agree or disagree, or maybe that's 4 different answer choices to one question, whatever it is. But then when we get to the virtual classroom, of course, we can't walk around the room. We're not in a shared space. And so Google Jamboard can be that shared space.
Jamboard is my jam.
Yeah. So with this, you can put the prompt in the middle, and here I've put a background image for whether they strongly agree, disagree, or strongly disagree. And it's really simple for kids to click on a new sticky note and then put their response where they want it to go. I've given them a prompt up in the top left where it says, I strongly agree because, but then they put in whatever is their response. And I would usually have kids put their initials on the sticky note, just so that I can kind of, if I go back, I can identify who put what where. But that is so simple, right? So you've just put your sticky note in there. If I wanted to, I can be in there at the same time and put my sticky note somewhere. And we've got a consensus of kind of where everyone is. In the classroom, I would normally have the kids in that corner together, kind of have a conversation. So you could, if you're using Google Meet, really easily go to, breakout rooms that have assigned links for the activity. But even in Zoom, if you're using Zoom, you could say, these are 1, 2, 3, and 4. Rename yourself as 1, 2, 3, or 4, and I will put you in that breakout room so that you can have a discussion with the people that have the same view as you. Or maybe we put them in random breakout rooms and they talk about, why they chose something whereas somebody else chose another. And then maybe we come back and they've been swayed and they want to move their sticky note somewhere else. So we can make this not just the digital activity itself, but we can still engage them in conversation and critical thinking and whatever the TEKS may be. Like if this is for ILA, maybe it's a persuasive writing kind of precursor or something like that.
Right.
Board's really neat for something like this.
I could see this work really well for math as well, like maybe a problem in the middle and almost like a multiple choice question, but your 4 options around the corners for what answer you got. And then we could discuss what the correct answer is and then talk about why the others were wrong or how they ended up in that place. So I can see this work for any area.
Yeah. And in that case, if you want to make it lower risk, don't have them put their initials. Do I need to know who answered what? Because we're going to have a conversation about it. We're going to have more iterations. We're going to work on it. We're going to try it again. So it can be something that's not necessarily, the kid's name is attached to it every time.
Yeah, for sure. Sometimes you get a lot more out of them if it's anonymous.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. So our last example for if this and that is how can we make your traditional field trip, which in the world we're in today, I don't know when those will be back, but how can we turn that field trip experience and what our students would get out of those field trip experiences into something digital that they can still learn from, that they can still get that out of, even though we can't physically be in that place? Google Earth, Tour Creator, and Google Arts and Culture have so many options to make this viable in your classroom. Yeah. You give your students the ability to break free from where they physically are and discover places all over the world.
Yeah, Google Earth is pretty neat, being able to focus in on one place so closely and see so much of the landscape and whatever else is there. I love Google Earth Tour Creator as well. Like, there's so many tours that are already out there that are made for you, but you can make your own also. We had a math project. I went to the grocery store. I took 360-degree pictures. And
this is one of the cool things you have ever done. I've got to say, it is so fun.
I was like, I am going to go to the grocery store right now. This is happening.
I played through this whole poly myself. I thought it was the neatest thing. Like, you blew my mind with this.
When the kids realized that it was the grocery store down the street from our school, they about lost it. It was hilarious. But they get to walk through the grocery store here, you know, and price the different items that they might need to create this recipe. So that really added a neat feature to that math project that we were doing. So unfortunately, I see this banner here that Poly's shutting down at the end of the summer or middle of the summer. When I first got that notification, like, I seriously wanted to cry, right? Because it's such a cool experience. But I believe the ones that are already created, you'll still be able to access. I don't know whether you'll still be able to create new ones or not.
I just have to trust that they have got a plan and there's going to be something better, right? Yeah. There's going to be something better.
Gotta be.
To make this option still work for us. There's got to be. Another really fun Google Earth option that we used was in Texas history, where we were studying like the immigrants in Texas and where they came from. How this kind of worked is students had to have an idea of the places that different immigrant groups settled in Texas. And so they used this to kind of create their own field trip where they go to Google Earth and find like Fredericksburg, for instance, where German immigrants settled. And then they would have to find evidence within that version of Google Earth of food that was influenced by their immigrant group. So they could zoom in and find restaurants that looked like they were German or things like that. Visual evidence of celebrations, clothing, things like that, contributions from each immigrant group. And so they would go through each immigrant group and do that and then attach their picture in the box. Yeah, and so cool. This could be broken down as like a group project. It could be assigned each kid, you know, completed it on their own, or really however you wanted to break it down. But then again, in the end, everyone has this huge amount of visual representation to use for review, to study.
Yeah, and I can see that in science too, like looking for different biomes. Like,
absolutely.
Find me an example of a rainforest. Find me an example of, you know, whatever the biome might be. But yeah, that's so cool.
Yeah, landforms. There's tons of different things. Yeah. I could see it being used in geography to find like buildings and structures that are certain shapes and things.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Tons of cool ways to use that for sure.
And, you know, there's lots of different activities, lots of other structures that we do, but we definitely just wanted to show you some examples and give you some ideas of some things that we've seen or that we've done to make these activities that we love doing in the classroom work for our virtual students as well.
Absolutely. And, you know, you and I had the discussion the other day, a few years from now, are we going to have to reverse this? Are we going to have to remember how to put it back in, how to do it face to face and on paper? I hope so. My fingers are crossed. But
yeah, like these things go in cycles, right?
Yeah. Follow us in 2 years for the reverse.
If that, then this.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for joining us for this episode of Digging In with the DLCs. You can find the resources that we discussed in this episode in the description box below.